because we truly understood each other.
Treasure too tall. So I'm Brandon. I'm the oldest grandson. I'm going to read a poem by Robert Frost called The Road Not Taken. If you knew Papa, he was someone who took that road very often. Two roads diverged in the yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that, the passing there, had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step that trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how a way leads on to a way. I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Now I'm just going to say a few words about Papa. So, Papa was no ordinary human being. He had the purest and most selfless soul of anybody I knew, and held true to his values no matter what anybody else thought. For this I admire him. As his first grandson, I spent a lot of time with him. From waking up early to go on fishing trips, to staying up late watching TV, and stealing a slice of cheesecake when everybody else had gone to bed. There's so many fond memories I have of Papa. He shared countless stories with me a countless number of times. And each time he told it as if it was the first time he was telling me. But I never got annoyed with him, because each time he told a story, he told it with the same passion and zest as he did the very first time. It was impossible not to find his positivity contagious. Well, many of these stories had to do with sports, fishing, or hunting. The majority of them are about family. For that, he was most proud. He's always been one of my biggest supporters through all aspects of my life. Nobody was ever more excited to hear about how I performed in football or basketball games. And nobody bragged more about my accomplishments than he did. He never failed to let me know. He's truly made me feel honored to be his grandson. I hope I continue to make you proud, Papa. Thank you.
I think you just did. God bless both of you guys. It's such a hard thing to do that. Thank you so much for sharing.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Melissa, Dale's daughter. On behalf of my mother, my husband Scott, and my two sons Brandon and Tyler, thank you all for coming. As Mom and I have made a lot of difficult phone calls this week to tell everyone the news, the overwhelming response after shock has been, he was such a nice man. He was always so kind. I always loved Dale. He was one of the good ones. And indeed he was. So let's talk about this special man that was Dale, Dad, Papa. And I'm sorry, but some of this is going to repeat some of what Brandon alluded to. We all know my dad never met a stranger. He literally would talk to anyone, whether you were a janitor or the President of the United States. He genuinely wanted to hear what you had to say. But he also wanted you to hear what he had to say. And as you all know, once he started talking, he would keep talking as long as you would let him. He loved to talk, and he loved to tell stories or little anecdotes. And quite frequently, they were about one of his favorite topics, his family. Perhaps he would tell you about his beautiful wife who's a terrific baker, or his amazing daughter, or the wonderful man she married who's such a great husband and father. But most likely, it would be about his favorite topic for the past 20 years, his grandsons. In his mind, they were perfect, and he was happy to tell you why. Often he would tell you the same story over and over, not necessarily because he forgot things he'd already told you, or lately maybe because he had, but usually because he liked telling the story. I would give anything to hear one of the stories I've already heard again right now. So on that note, please indulge me while I tell a story. I apologize to those of you who may have already heard it, but it was a favorite in our family. Dad and I were in the grocery store checkout line when I was about 4 or 5 years old. He told me to pick out a candy bar. I looked over the selections carefully and chose 2. Holding one in each hand, I stared at them thoughtfully. "Have you decided?" he asked. "I'm trying, but I can't decide which one," I replied. "Well, why don't you get both?" he said. I smiled, like this possibility had never occurred to me, and said, "Oh, okay." One day when I was older, I asked if he remembered that incident, and of course he did. I decided that confession is good for the soul, and I told him that he had been played. I never intended to choose one. I always wanted both, and I put on what I thought was a good act to get them. He laughed, not because I was such a clever little girl, but because it never occurred to me that he was onto my ploy the entire time. But how could he not give his little girl, the apple of his eye, as he often called me, what she wanted? He always wanted to give me whatever I wanted, whenever possible, and within reason, of course. Trust me, this play worked with candy bars, not cars. I did have to learn that hard work pays off too. Dad's next passion after family was definitely fishing, and he often combined the two. I frequently went fishing with Dad when I was younger. I didn't always fish myself. Sometimes I just watched and talked to Dad, and he would let me reel in anything he caught. After all, that's the fun part of fishing, the catching. Eventually I stopped going. Mom always said when I was young I liked fishing and thought boys were yucky, but somewhere along the way I decided that I liked boys and fishing was yucky. Fortunately, both of his grandsons love fishing, and would come up to go fishing with him here, and they would take him to their favorite fishing spots when he came to visit us in Virginia. In recent years, he even convinced Mom to go along, and she often outfished him. He would call me and give me the stats of their latest catch, and he was always just as pleased if Mom had caught the biggest or the most as he was if he had. But that was Dad. He always cared as much, or usually more, about others than he did himself. So, Dad was a talker, a family man, and a fisherman, but he was also part comedian, or so he liked to think. He loved to laugh, and he loved to make people laugh. When I was in college, if an envelope arrived with Dad's handwriting on it, you can rest assured that it had a comic in it. Probably a Far Side cartoon back in those days, and a $20 bill with a Post-it note on it. No words, usually something like a picture of a pizza on it, in case I needed a suggestion of what I might do with the money. That would make me laugh, and it always seemed to come at a stressful time when I needed a good laugh and a pizza. Although he could make me laugh, like any parent, he could also frustrate me too. And he had one particular saying that I hated throughout my entire childhood. When I was upset about something that hadn't gone my way, he would simply say, "Well, nobody ever said life was going to be fair." This wasn't the response I wanted. I wanted him to be just as upset and indignant as I was. But it was another good lesson learned. I still don't like it, but today I have to say, Dad, you are right. Life is not fair. If it were fair, you would still be here. But life is good, and you always try to be optimistic and look at the glass as half full. So I would know you would want us to focus on the good times and great memories we have of you, and that is what I will try to do. Dad lives on through me and Raymond and Tyler, and we will carry on the lessons that Dad and Papa taught us through both his words and his actions. Everyone is worth talking to. Treat them with kindness and respect. Family is important. Give as much to you as you can to your children, but teach them to work hard. And don't forget to laugh.
Thank you so much.